All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the RetireReady podcast. I'm David Nicholas here with Bailey Woods, our newest financial advisor at the firm, and really excited to talk with Bailey today and also let just all of our clients and listeners know a little bit more about Bailey, who he is. I think we'll call this our Get to Know Bailey Corner podcast. So it's going to be great. As always, you can go to our website, nicholaswealth.com. But Bailey, man, glad to have you here. And you've been with us for, not quite a month, but close to it.
Right.
So, man, I just wanted to bring you on and kind of talk with you. You really have a impressive background. Rarely do I feel intimidated by a resume, but reading yours, I was like, I got some work to do. I really do. So, obviously, you should be very proud. But maybe just kind of tell me, you grew up in Marietta area, right? Obviously, our firm's here in Marietta, Atlanta. But tell me a little bit about grew up. High school, college, kind of what that looked like.
Yeah, so grew up here in Marietta. Always lived in the kind of Marietta area, and graduated from Walton High School.
Okay.
When I was
a great high school, by the way.
Yeah, and from there went on to Auburn, where I got my undergrad while I was playing football for the team, and played tight end there.
That's awesome.
And then
what was that experience? Was that? I mean, I can imagine D1 level college football, pretty intense.
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely. There were definitely times I didn't feel like I belonged out there. There was a lot of great athletes, a lot of guys that went on to have long, successful careers. And
so, what year would that have been?
I was there 2007 through 2009. So Coach Tuberville was there my first 2 years, and then Coach Chiswick came in my last year.
Okay.
Yep.
Was that Cam Newton era?
So same age as Cam, but I graduated a year before, and so I was not there for the national championship season.
Got it. Yeah. But Cam was quarterback though during that time, or no?
Just that. So the year he was a quarterback was the year I left.
Got it. Yeah, that's right. Okay, because I couldn't remember if that. I thought that time overlapped, but you're right. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you were playing football at Auburn, going to school there. I mean, it's which was also a great school, wonderful school. What made you want to go to Auburn?
So when I was going through the recruiting process, I just kind of visited most of the schools in the Southeast, mainly SEC and ACC schools, and was really looking for a school that had a good football program, but also had a good track rate of graduation for their football players, and had a lot of different opportunities in terms of the school, and the majors that I might pursue. And so, Auburn's, they call it the loveliest village on the plains. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere in Alabama, and that kind of suited me. Didn't want to be in a big city or anything like that.
No, it's great. The first time I ever went to Auburn was in college. Buddy of mine, actually I had a few friends at Auburn, but I was not in a fraternity, but there was a fraternity party that had Snoop Dogg was playing, which, for those of you that know Snoop Dogg, that was the ultimate college concert I think to go to at a frat concert. So, no, wonderful school. So you played football at Auburn. So tell me kind of afterwards, you got out of school.
Yeah. So I actually left Auburn because I was planning on going into the Marine Corps right after graduation. And when I, went and got my release from the football team, let them know that I was, going to be done after graduation, I still had eligibility remaining. And, this was before the transfer portal and NIL in those days. But because I'd graduated, I was eligible to transfer and play immediately. I wouldn't have to sit out a year.
That's awesome.
And so got some interest from some smaller schools in the Southeast, and ended up at Georgia State and played for, the inaugural team at Georgia State in 2010.
Very cool.
And played there for 2 years while I got my master's in education. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah. Very cool. So, man, that's great. So I didn't realize you were at Georgia State while you were getting your master's. So master's in education, so undergrad degree from Auburn.
Yeah, that was in public administration with a minor in business.
Minor in business, then you get your graduate degree in education. And then, so where did the Marines, so after school, did you work when you graduated Georgia State for a little bit, or did you go right into the Marines? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I was actually going through the process of signing up for the Marine Corps while I was at Georgia State. I was meeting with the recruiting office and everything, and, was just waiting to, graduate from, the master's program before I started. And kind of while that was happening, the Marine Corps was getting smaller and smaller, and they were bringing less and less people in. So what ended up being what I thought was going to be, a 6-month process ended up taking about 2 or 3 years before I finally accepted a contract with the Marine Corps in 2013. So
do you go in as an officer with a graduate degree and undergrad degree, or how does that work as far as, are you knowing, forgive my ignorance on this, but are you knowing exactly what your position is going to be as far as what your role will be when you accept a contract?
So each branch is different, and so the Marine Corps, you do not know when you're going into it. So you can go either the enlisted route or the officer route, and so I opted for the officer route, and I went in. You really go in with knowing one of 3 things. You're either going to be a lawyer and go the JAG route. You're going to be a pilot, or you're going to work, in something else besides those 2, really. And I made the mistake of not wanting to be a pilot, and there's another story behind that later. But went for a ground contract, and while going through my training, opted to go the infantry route.
Did you have any flight experience up to that point at all, or?
I had not. So because they were trying to draw down the size of the Marine Corps, they didn't have any active duty slots for ground officers, but they did for air officers. They were actually in need of more people to sign up there. So they took me out on a jet and let me fly for a little bit and tried to get me to do an air contract. And I stupidly told them that I wasn't interested in doing that. I probably could have used Top Gun 2 to influence my decision.
You, yeah.
But
was it like a C-130? What did they take you out?
It was like a little twin turbojet.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
So.
Wow. So growing up, I used to either want to be a financial advisor or an Air Force pilot. So I know which one I would have taken on that. I think the Marines has these. Have you ever seen the A-10 Warthogs?
Mm-hmm. So that's the Air Force is actually the only one that flies the A-10.
It's just Air Force.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is an awesome.
That is just an unbelievable. Yeah. So so you go in as a infantry officer, which is basically, you're on the infantry. You're there at the essential. I'm guessing that's kind of a frontline kind of operation for the Marines, essentially, right?
Right. Yep. And so the training that I went through for the first 9 months is kind of general for all officers. So you do 3 weeks of officer candidate school. They kind of test to see whether you have what it takes. And once you graduate from there, they send you to the basic school. The Marine Corps is the only branch that does that, where you get 6 to 7 months of training on. Really, in the Marine Corps, the focus is on everyone's a rifleman, and so they're teaching everybody basic tactics, basic infantry skills, and you start to learn about some of the ancillary services on top of that. But the last 3 months of my training is where it was strictly infantry training, and they start getting into the nitty-gritty details of, not just how to become an infantry officer, but how do you incorporate, the air support and tanks and artillery and all those things into what you do as an infantry officer.
Man, that's amazing. So, all right, so you go through training, and then are you deployed immediately, or what does that process look like once you're officially through basic and you get assigned?
So, because I took the option of taking the reserve contract, they didn't have any of these active contracts. The reserve contract was the only thing available. And so I opted for the reserve contract and came back here to Georgia and started teaching. So I was teaching and coaching at Walton High School, went back to where I graduated from. And during that time, my reserve duties were, about 3 weeks in the summertime, you'd activate to go and train. And then, 2 to 3 days a month you would activate. And so that was really what my reserve life looked like from 2014 when I got out up until, mid to late 2017.
Wow. Okay. So 3 years of just of reserves where, and then so for the week in a month, is there a base in Georgia? Where do you go for that?
Yeah. So our unit was based out of Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
But we did all of our training at Fort Benning. And so we did, we used a lot of the same places that their infantry and the Rangers, a lot of their courses and a lot of their ranges and things like that.
Yeah. So you would drive down to Fort Benning on like a Friday afternoon and come back on Sunday evening. Yeah. Wow. Very cool. So, all right. So through this process, so you're reserve officer in the Marines, working, coaching, teaching at Walton.
Yep.
And then tell me again. So you became active, and remind me again kind of what that story. But in between there, I know you met your dream girl, right?
Right.
We can't forget the most important part of the story.
Absolutely. So I met what is now my wife up in Quantico. So I was graduating from the basic school, and she was at graduation to support a friend of hers that she grew up with that I'd become friends with, through our training process.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we started dating. And
how many times did she ask you out before you said yes?
More than once.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah, I got it.
So she and I started dating. I was still up in Quantico for 3 or 4 months after we first met, so we were able to spend a little bit of time together. She lived in DC in the area.
Through friends, or what? Just an introduction, or?
Yep, and it was last minute. I was running in for graduation. It was time for us to go and line up and start the process and everything. And I just happened to see my friend and said hey to her, and she said, "Oh, by the way, this is my friend Taylor." And that was.
She was like, "Who's this strapping 6'5" late guy running in here?" Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So she moved down to Georgia. We started dating, and we ended up getting married, in 2016. So not long after, about 3 years after. About 2 years after we met, we were married. So
that's amazing. So like you meet her, and were you just immediately like, this is the exact type of girl? I mean, how did that transition work from dating to proposing to her?
Yeah. So funny enough, we were both actually dating other people when we met.
Okay.
We were both kind of in not serious relationships at the time, but we started dating probably about 6 weeks after we met the first time.
Okay.
And we just hit it off very fast. And we just really I think we both figured out very quickly that we were the right one for each other.
Sure.
And so when she moved down to Georgia, and she was living, kind of in the Buckhead area at the time, and ended up, we settled down up here in the West Cobb, Kennesaw area.
Yeah. No, that's great. So, okay, so you get married, still working at high school in Walton.
Yep. So it was the summer that we got married is when I transitioned from Walton teaching and coaching, and then I went over to work at 21st Century Financial, which was a small firm in Sandy Springs.
Got it. That's right.
So that was kind of my foray into the finance world.
And what made you want to make that shift? Because you had a minor in business.
Mm-hmm.
So going from business and education, minor business, and then making the leap into the investment management world, what kind of drew you to that?
Yeah, so I had a guy reach out to me on LinkedIn, and he had a job as a financial advisor, and asked me if I was interested. And I knew that I wanted to leave Walton at the time. I had started to get some interest at some other coaching and teaching jobs, and so I was pursuing those heavily when I got this message on LinkedIn. And I went and met with this guy, and he started to tell me about the job opportunity and everything. And I thought, wow, this is actually really cool. I'm really interested in this. And, I started to talk to Taylor and just said, if I'm going to make a career change, I'm 25, 26 years old at this time. This is probably the time to do it, And so that was really kind of what drove it. Was I was interested enough that I didn't want to look back and regret not taking a chance at something different.
Sure.
And I didn't take the job with that person, but I opened my job search from teaching and coaching to teaching and coaching and being a financial advisor. So that was kind of what led me down that path.
That's great. Okay. So you're working with the investment firm here in the area. And then do you get the call from the Marines to go active, or what did that look like? Yeah,
so I actually spent a year at 21st Century Financial, and then through a connection that I'd met, another Auburn grad, he introduced me to Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
And I took a job offer from Goldman Sachs after about a year at 21st Century Financial.
Yeah.
And I started there June of 2017. And
okay, so what is that, about 8 years ago, roughly?
So just over 8 years ago. And I was there for probably about 2 or 3 months. And I got an email that was just talking about our plans for the upcoming training schedule. And somebody had responded to what somebody on our battalion staff saying, hey, there needs to be an adjustment for this because of our deployment. So that was my
just like an oh by the way.
Yes, that was my oh by the way moment. And so I picked up the phone and started calling people in the chain of command. And I said, are we deploying? Is this? Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah.
And so sure enough, I'd been at Goldman for about 3 months when I saw that message, and we found out. So this was probably September of 2017 that we were going to be activating in 2018 for our deployment to Afghanistan.
Wow. There you go. So you got this. What I mean, to get a job at Goldman, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, it's a competitive job. Obviously, you were well qualified to get that job, but again, you just got this new job. You've got a new wife. You guys were married at the time.
Yes.
You guys were married at the time. And then now you're getting called to go serve overseas. So tell me a little bit about, like, were you nervous, excited? I mean, in some ways you've been training for all these years. You've been in reserve. Was there this anticipation that you wanted to get out into the action, or what did that feel like now? Because you started the Marines a little different than where you were when you got that offer. As you got the call. So what was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, so it was definitely a little bit inconvenient in terms of the timing, having just started a new job, but it was something that was the reason I joined the Marine Corps. I always wanted to, go and serve, and I wanted to go and, fight, and that was just kind of what I always envisioned myself doing. And I had a great time in the reserves, got to meet a lot of great people, did a lot of cool training, but it never really scratched the itch of why I joined.
Sure.
And so I think that, I speak for the large majority of the guys I deployed with, where everybody was, excited about that opportunity that, hey, this is what we signed up for. We've kind of been chomping at the bit, waiting to get this chance, and now we're finally getting it.
Yeah. So what does that look like exactly? So you get deployed, you get do you go to Pendleton for a month or two, or what does that look like prior to deploying?
The great thing about the reserves is when you do those 2 to 3 week summer trainings, you kind of refresh your skills and kind of keep them sharp. But we actually went to Fort Benning for an additional training. So we had just gone to 29 Palms out in California, where you do all the most advanced training that the Marine Corps has to offer. And so that had happened that summer. Well, then we come to Fort Benning in December of 2017 to do some additional training. We do another 2 to 3 weeks of preparation to get ready, and just, more training. So we do that December of 2017, and then we ultimately activated and were called to full-time duty starting January. So it happened pretty fast.
Yeah. All right, so you get to Afghanistan, boots on the ground. What were your first thoughts from being there? I mean, you're in the middle of, you're deployed to a war zone, right? This is in Afghanistan, active war zone. You're on base. I mean, everything you thought it was it not what you thought it was? What was that experience like?
I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into just based off of a lot of the research and the planning that I had done.
Sure.
But my brother had actually been to Afghanistan on 2 deployments before I had.
He's a Marine as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my brother's an artillery officer in the Marine Corps, and so he deployed in 2010 and 2012 over there. And so between the research I had done and what he had told me, I had a good idea of what I was getting into.
Sure.
But it's if you've watched the movies, you read the books, it's pretty well what's described. It's a very different country, very different customs, very different people. It was a tough fight that we were just kind of in a bad position, and obviously at the time we didn't know what was going to transpire a few years later. But it wasn't a fun place to be.
No, I can imagine. So Taliban, did you work? I mean, obviously we saw it happen now, but did you interact with the Taliban much? I mean, did you? I mean, that was obviously who we were fighting against. I would get primarily.
So what our job was over there, we were at a base called Bastion Leatherneck Shorab, and there was a huge base that during the big campaigns that had gone 10, 15 years before was massive. It had hundreds of thousands of people there. And ultimately, the Americans and the British gave it over to the Afghans, and it kind of became a shell of what it used to be. And we had a very small footprint within that larger base, and there was about 1,000 of us there. And my unit that was over there, our company was in charge of defending our base, both the smaller section as well as kind of the surrounding area. But there was another unit there that their whole job was targeting, enemy based on the intel that we were gathering. And so that was, really what the majority of our operation was using drones and air support to take out bad guys, that we'd use a lot of, counterintelligence and human intelligence to find.
Unbelievable. So your specific role, would you say base commander? Is that the best way to describe it as far as what your role was there at the base?
Yeah, so our company was about 200 Marines, and then my platoon that I was directly in charge of was about 60 Marines and sailors. And so my platoon specifically, we were the ones that were manning the walls and doing the patrols and things like that of the base.
Yeah.
The other platoons in our company had other jobs. One was specific to the flight line, so there were planes flying in and out of there. So their whole job was to go shut down the flight line and get ready for planes coming in and out to make sure they weren't getting shot down and things like that. Everybody had a different function, but our platoon specifically was the defense of the base, manning the walls and the machine guns and things like that.
Yeah. Wow. So you get the call to go over there. Had you and your wife talked about starting a family? I mean, is that something you guys were planning? I know you said you're married, you get a great job at Goldman Sachs, then you're getting deployed. But what about what's family, kids look like in this whole scenario?
Yeah. So backtracking a little bit, we were actually found out that we were pregnant November of 2017. So
and you deployed in
January is when I left.
Okay.
So my wife, when we left Montgomery, was about 10 weeks pregnant at that point.
Wow.
So we were not, starting a family intentionally at that point.
Yeah.
But my first daughter was born halfway through my deployment. So
you were in Afghanistan while your first daughter was born.
Yes.
And I guess you kind of knew the cost of serving, at least in a small way, was that you knew going into that you were going to miss the birth of your firstborn.
Yeah.
How did your wife take that? I mean, it's, again, I know she knows that you were called and you did this, but I'm sure she wouldn't love that idea, I would guess, or...
Yeah, I mean... She handled it really well. She knew what she was getting into by marrying me, and it was, being on the reserve side, it's a little bit different just because it can catch you off guard, kind of like it did to us.
Yeah.
But she was a rock star throughout the whole thing. And she's very independent and able to take care of herself. But we were also very fortunate that we had family and friends nearby that helped take up the slack while I was gone, and were there for her.
Yeah. So I'm guessing the Marines on a deployment, having your firstborn child isn't an excusable
no.
to come home.
Yeah. So funny enough, I think like I said, there was about 60 Marines and sailors under my command, and I think 9 of them had babies in 2018.
Wow.
Some right before and some right after the deployment. The Marine Corps didn't send any of us home. Unfortunately.
Yeah. That's not how that works. Well, again, I know it's. For so many of us, of our clients and friends that we know that have served, and you go into it fully understanding that you're going to sacrifice some, and for some it's more than others. So how does your wife FaceTime you? I mean, how does this work? I mean, time change. I mean, were you just... She's heading to the hospital. You're kind of waiting what's going on as you're defending a base.
Yeah. So fortunately, we did have the ability to do some, some calls and FaceTimes and things like that. So, she and I FaceTime while she was in the hospital and everything. And so I think, she was born in the middle of the night while I was in Afghanistan.
Sure.
So, I got a video the next day. Once I woke up,
Awesome.
woke up to that video.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, it was very exciting, and it was it made the homecoming that much sweeter.
For sure, yeah. So, your daughter's born, and then how long after that did you finally come home? Was it that same year? I forget, your deployment was how long? Was it?
Yeah, so we were there 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah,
Okay.
So I got home October of that year. So Blakely at that point was about 2.5 months old.
Okay. Got it. So she's 2.5 months. You meet your daughter for the first time. What was that like?
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say that best day of my life. A lot of people can look at, their wedding day or the day that their child was born or something like that. And for me, it was just a little bit different because I got to come home and meet my daughter for the first time, but obviously see my wife for the first time in 7-8 months, and then see my parents and other family and be back on U.S. soil.
That's right.
Let's not forget that part was a pretty nice plus.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you come home, meet your new daughter, and so then 4 years, is that, I know these contracts run, was it a 4-year contract that you had, or what? Now that your daughter's born, you come home, what did that look like for the Marines after that?
Yeah, so our contract was 4 years of mandatory service, but you kind of have the flexibility in the 4 years after that, especially on the reserve side in terms of how active you need to be in participation.
Yeah.
So I continued to obviously be active at that point, but I came home, obviously getting back into the swing of things with the new job. At this point, I'd been there for a year and a half, but had really only worked there for, about 5 months.
I'm sure they love that too. I'm sure they love that.
But ultimately, I became an executive officer with the Marine Corps at that point, and, had kind of had a change of roles at that point that, wasn't necessarily what I signed up to be in the Marine Corps for.
Sure.
Kind of a little bit more behind the desk and, a little bit less action than what I had signed up for, which I knew was coming at some point, and that was fine. But my wife actually got pregnant again in, May, June of 2019 with our second. And that was also when I started my MBA and my Master's of Finance at Auburn.
Okay.
So between having a little one at the house and my wife being pregnant, started back to my new job and starting back to school again. It just was a lot on my plate at that point.
Yeah.
And so ultimately at that point I stepped down out of the Marine Corps, and given the cycles, I knew that the chances of me getting to deploy ever again were slim to none, and it just didn't really seem like it made sense for me to stay in to stay in at that point.
That makes sense. So you're back home from deployment. Now your second daughter is born. So tell me a little bit. So you're now at Goldman. You've been there. Tell me a little bit about kind of your experience at Goldman Sachs. Obviously, we know Goldman's one of the largest investment banks in the world, and they have a large skew of things and services they provide, from private wealth to employee benefit planning to obviously investment banking and trading. So you really were on the corporate, I would say, kind of corporate investments, corporate benefit side, right? Planning to a degree at Goldman.
Yeah. So we fell under the same asset management division. So, a lot of people, when you think about the wealth management, division at Goldman Sachs, we were in the same division. The primary difference with us and the private wealth management side of the business was the people that we worked with were primarily corporate executives. And so, the largest part of our client base were executives working at Fortune 500 companies. And so we weren't just doing the wealth management side of, helping them build their portfolio. We're also helping them figure out, hey, what medical plan should you sign up for this year? Hey, how many years are you away from your retirement?
Yep.
What's your tax liability going to be like next year after getting your stock options?
Yep.
It was really much more planning, just overall holistic financial planning, as opposed to just doing the portfolio management side.
Got it. Yeah, which is great. I mean, because you're looking at the entire picture for the client, right? What do they need from maybe their own benefits and 401k, but also from taxes. I know you had a focus as well on the actual tax prep. So I mean, you and your teams would essentially even prep taxes for clients if they needed it, right?
Right. Yeah. So my first and second year there, I think I went from maybe preparing like 50 returns my first year to like 70 my second year.
Wow, yeah.
And then I was up to the point I was doing, close to 100 returns a year for clients. So there was no better way to learn taxes than to get into the nitty gritty of preparing the returns.
Which is great, because I mean at Nicholas Wealth we do a lot of tax prep. We don't actually do. We do a lot of tax planning. We don't actually do tax prep yet, but it's something that me and you have had conversations around, and as we look to add services, the tax prep world's a little interesting, right? In that it's a lot of work, and it's got to be done right, and so. But I do think there's some value at it. I mean, and you've told this to me before, but the tax prep part of the services you provide obviously felt like it was a net benefit to clients overall. They're not having to go somewhere else, or they can kind of get it all in-house when they work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the number one thing that helped us differentiate ourselves from some of the people that we worked with at the time were a lot of people in the industry aren't paying attention to the tax liabilities when they're looking at your portfolio. They're worried about, what's the return that you're getting, and, they're worried about that kind of in a silo. And when you start to think about the tax planning piece of it is, hey, I want you to get great returns on your investments, but I also want to make sure that you're not just getting a good rate of return, but is that rate of return the best return you can get net of fees and net of tax?
That's right.
And so that's where the tax, understanding the tax implications of those choices and of the whole plan was something that, was big for us at the time. Yeah. And not a lot of people pay attention to that.
That's right. That's right. And so one of the things that when we look at Nicholas Wealth, obviously culture is very important to us, and part of we do a lot to try to make sure that we have a culture that is one that obviously we've talked about our crest before and all of the values that are in our crest, but we also like to attract like-minded clients as well. And I think, Bailey, what was so just exciting about you is that you checked, about every single box we could possibly check, right? You just obviously talented, and then, college athlete, and then you served your country, and then married, 3 beautiful kids. I was telling a client all of your background, and I mistakenly said, Bailey has 2 graduate degrees, and you so politely corrected me and said, David, I actually have 3 graduate degrees, but that's besides the point. Yeah. I can't even keep up with the amount of degrees that you have. And then also, I know you and your wife, you serve at your church, you're a deacon at your church as well. And our kids go to the same Christian school here in the area. But tell me a little bit about like what and I didn't ask about your son. So you're so 2 beautiful little girls, and then your youngest is your boy as well.
That's Weston, Wild Weston.
Well, I love it. I love Wild Weston. I love it.
Yeah. So he was born in December of 2021. So he rounded out the crew for us.
Nice. Yeah. So we're right. We have 2 girls. My oldest are 2 girls, and I've got my little boy as well. I've made that joke before, like, many of you know my story. Growing up, I had a single mom. I had 2 older sisters. I got married, and I had 2 daughters. And so it was like I was just surrounded. So my girls are amazing, and I have the best women in my life. But it was just nice to have a little boy. Yeah. And I'm reminded, and you said Wild West, and I was swinging my son Luke yesterday on the swing, and he's like, Daddy, higher. I'm like, all right, buddy, but you just got to hold on. Daddy, I'm going to hold on. And he's flying. I can see Kristen eyeing me from the kitchen. Flying. What does he do at the top of the thing? Let's go. Somehow his butt stayed connected to the swing, but he came and just face planted it right into the mulch. And so that's the joy of having a boy, man.
There you go.
That's the joy of having a boy, right? No safe space for the boys. They got to get hurt. And, he just had a big O, and I was like, buddy, that is awesome, man. You're looking good, dude. Tears were flowing. But man, I'll tell you, so as you think about, relatively young, obviously you've been, you 8 years at Goldman Sachs, 4 years in the reserves, 3 graduate degrees and college. You've done so many things in your life, I would say, in a somewhat short period of time, but not really when you add up all the years. What's really your driving? What really drives you to keep, I would say, growing and building and making yourself the best you can be? Is there something in particular in your life that's caused that? Is it your faith? What is it that you think really motivates you and drives you? Because again, I'm not saying you're not normal, but and I say this in the best way. Like it's just you've done things that most people would take 2 lifetimes to do, right, in a sense. And so I just think that you've really accomplished a lot at such a young age. What's kind of the driving motivation behind that?
Yeah. There's been times in my life where I might have lacked direction in terms of what I specifically wanted to do, but I was always drawn to the things that were hard. And so anything that I felt like it was something that was going to challenge me and something that, is kind of a impressive feat to some extent was always something that I wanted to go conquer then. And so that's kind of what has always driven me, always made me want to, keep working harder and work towards those goals. And, that was kind of what drove me for all of the, big moments in my life and these big changes that I've had. It was always something that was kind of a driving force was, let's continue to accomplish more and reach for more and do more.
Yeah. I love it. So really, do you think you're parents instilled that in you, your father, or what do you think that drive came from?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely came from my parents as well as, my family just as a whole.
Yeah.
My brother and I have a lot in common as well. My dad and my granddad both played college football, so I had that in common with, my dad and my
Sure.
grandfather. But my brother, being a Marine officer, it was just, definitely had a lot of things that I was fortunate I had someone to look up to
Sure.
and
Yeah.
kind of blaze a path for me, so to speak, in
Sure.
the sense that I had a great example from my parents and my siblings.
That's great. And you said both your grandfathers or your wife's grandfather and your grandfather also served in the military
so
as well?
both of my grandfathers were Marines.
Okay.
Two grandfathers were Marines, and one of them also played football at Tech.
Nice.
He had a somewhat similar story. One of my favorite jokes, he's since passed away, but he used to tell me he went to Georgia Tech for a year and realized that he needed to leave and go join the Marine Corps because he was sitting in class and the professor said that pi r squared, and he rose up out of his seat and put his hand up and he said, "That's not true." He said pi r round. And so pi r squared is actually pi r round. So that
love it.
He
he's not a Georgia Tech candidate. I don't think.
Yeah, so he was not he was not up to snuff for the academics at Tech. So he went into the Marine Corps shortly after.
I love it. I love it. Well, as a Georgia grad, we love hiring Georgia Tech. They make great employees. They're great. They're hardworking. They're smart. So they're not going to go out and start businesses and do it, but they're great. They really are. So for all of our Georgia Tech clients out there and our employees, we love you all. But this football year is going to be interesting though for Tech. It really is.
Yeah.
I miss the really good Thanksgiving close games, and last year we had one, so maybe we'll have one this year.
Yeah.
But that's man. So, and again, this is part of one of the things that we put in our tree, in our crest. Sorry, one of the elements that we have in our company crest is a picture of a tree, and we call this our legacy tree. And there's this quote that says, "Societies grow great because wise men and women plant trees in whose shade they may never sit." And I almost think in a lot of ways, Bailey, you're kind of the fruition of, you've taken what some of the foundation that was laid for you, but it's not enough just for that foundation to be laid. You have to go out and build upon it. But I do know that it all starts from even generations before, right? From
absolutely.
Your grandfather serving and setting a great foundation, your parents working hard and instilling that in you and your wife together making those decisions to do that for your family. But you can now start to see a generation, 2 generations later, the fruit of all of those years of hard work. And not that family's perfect and perfection is a lot of mistakes. But it's hard for us sometimes think to the second and third generations, right? Like when we think of our kids today, we both have young kids, but like what foundations are we setting now to when our grandkids talk about their grandpa, God willing, if your kids have kids, but their grandpa Bailey, and how he served and what he did to set up a foundational life for them. It's just amazing to see. And I think that's ultimately what we want with our clients too, and we want them to be able to lay a firm foundation for, unless Jesus returns soon, but for what could be generations to come, right? And you set the legacy, and some of that is you do the things today that you may never actually see the fruit of, right? You plant the tree that you'll never sit under the shade, but I think, Bailey, you're just a great example of generations doing the right thing and then seeing an outcome, and then you taking that and building upon it in a way that I know your family's very proud of you as well, and we're grateful to have you. And I know our clients, once they get to know you and know who you are, and I think they're gonna love getting to work with you. And I know you're gonna be able to drive a lot of value and really help a lot of lives while you're here.
Yeah,
so
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, it was a great show today. I appreciate you tuning in again here with Bailey Woods. I sort of started with his with his resume, but Auburn grad, played football tight end at Auburn, has 3 graduate degrees, spent 8 years at Goldman Sachs, served in the Marines. But I think the best part about him, he's got a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful kids, and a deacon at his church. And so I'm sure you're going to be adding many more things to that as if there was room to add any more. But Bailey, great to have you here, and we'll have you back on. We'll do another show. We'll get more into the nitty-gritty of finance and taxes. We'd love to get your thoughts on that as well. So as always, thank you for tuning in for the Retire Ready show. You can go to our website, which is nicholaswilliams.com. rettirewealth.com to find out more about the firm, and we're there to answer any questions that you may have. Have a blessed week. We'll see you back here soon for the next Retire Ready.